So I had a little bit of a thought. Around this week, I was listening to the Our Opinions Are Correct podcast, hosted by Charlie Jane Anders and Annalee Newitz. And they're doing a conversation about speculative fiction conventions and the ways it can be done to improve them and make them last longer for future generations. Addressing issues like, hey, it's difficult keeping staff around for an all-volunteer staff. Stuff like building practically with building institutional knowledge. Stuff like compensating volunteers for their volunteers not being in any way compensated for their work, where they're basically paying to work, and all this, that, and the other thing. And as they're going through these things, a lot of these are problems I feel like have been solved by anime conventions. Stuff like, if you volunteer at the convention, you're for a certain number of hours, your badge gets comped. If not for this year, then the next. If you or if you panel a certain number of panels, your badge is comped. That sort of thing. But the last part, Hugo nominees are expected to pay to go to Worldcon. Usually the Hugo nominees also do panels and readings of whatever their book is, either the book that's nominated or something else they have that's out, or that sort of thing. They're part of the programming. You're there to spend time with the Hugo nominees. But they pay, and panelists should be compensated, and that is something that anime conventions do. And as they're going over this episode, they get to towards the end discussion of the things that can be done to fix this, and a lot of them are things that anime conventions have done. And this got me thinking a little bit of the fanzine that I used to do. I used to have a companion fanzine to this YouTube channel, to my blog, which had a bunch of stuff that didn't even go up on the blog, because it was targeting them for an audience of speculative fiction fans who were not necessarily going to anime conventions and trying to introduce them to different aspects of anime culture. I did a article for a big feature article for one on the Nasuverse, on the works of Kinoko Nasu, the various parts of it, works in the genre, Fate Stay Night, Garden of Sinners, all this sorts of stuff. In fact, a lot of the shows that I watched, or shows and films I watched and will be covering on, either have covered or will be covering on the Anime Explorations podcast, are stuff that I sought out to do for that fanzine article for. Now, the Heaven's Feel films were not out at the time, but otherwise, I watched everything that was in existence for Fate that I could get at that point. And the reaction that I got from it was deafening silence. And when I got letters of comment on the topic, the general response I got was, well, gee, thank you for writing this article. It's very I enjoyed reading it. I am never going to watch anime. And it hit me a moment of realization with all the fact that the answers to a lot of these problems are things that anime conventions themselves have solved is, I think, the core ultimate problem that speculative fiction conventions face in art, in particularly literary speculative fictions conventions face in this day and age, is there is not enough cross-pollination of staff and the people running them. They're not going to other conventions. They're not volunteering at other conventions, seeing their, you don't have the people who are running the local science fiction conventions going with their kids, because often they're older people, in some cases retired. They're not going with their kids or their grandkids to a local anime convention and going, well, since I'm here and I have experience doing con running, I'll volunteer and help out for a bit. Even if I'm not interested in the panel subject matter, I'll volunteer and chip in and kind of become part of the community and get to know these people. There's that lack of interest. When I went to Portland Retro Gaming Expo this year, as I one of the things I'll do is I just check the health and do a temperature check on the Lloyd Center Mall and maybe grab something from their food court, because they have affordable stuff that has vegetables in it. And you need to eat stuff with vegetables when you're at a convention. And I go up to the food court or walk the way I get there. I take the Max over, and it takes me past the Lloyd Center Hilton. And, gee, there's a bunch of people over there. It looks kind of like the setup for Oricon. I look up at my phone and look it up. Oh, hey, Oricon is there. Now, this is Oricon used to be the science fiction convention I go to somewhat on the regular. I went to 4 or 5 years. Part of the reason why I stopped going is, honestly, the paneling structure created a situation where I didn't feel like there was a place for me there. And that the people who were running it were in a bubble that had them separate from the larger convention running, the fandom convention community. And I don't just mean like the Rose City Comic Con or the big Reed Pop run conventions or that sort of thing. Those conventions in general, like the convention in general in the Portland area. So on top of all of this, one of the things I'd run into with talking to the local people at the local anime convention at the convention itself, on message boards and that sort of thing, when I brought up the topic of, hey, what about Oricon? Well, going to Oricon, checking that out, before I realized that they weren't actually interested in cultivating a younger generation of speculative fiction fans, was, well, it's too close to this other convention that I'm going to, Portland Retro Gaming Expo, or it's right on top of Thanksgiving weekend, and my job doesn't let me take time off that close to Thanksgiving. Because I'm a younger person and I have a job that limits my hours and doesn't pay that well and that sort of thing. And also this is more expensive than Komoricon. I can afford I can afford 1 or 2 conventions a year. And if I go to this, then maybe I can't go to Komoricon, or I can't go to Portland Retro Gaming Expo. In this case, you definitely can't go to Portland Retro Gaming Expo. They're both the same week. And this leads to kind of a messy vibe. I apologize for the light shifting. I have a screensaver thing on that side. I want to have some light from there. Anyway, this leads to the kind of messy problem here is Komoricon, and I've talked about this to the past, once upon a time, they did have, or attempt to put a table at Komoricon, particularly the first couple years at the Oregon Convention Center. And this is actually one of the places where I heard this conversation in the halls about timing and that sort of thing. And I brought this up, and the response I got from them was, well, Oricon came first. Oricon is the oldest fandom convention in Oregon. Komoricon should have to change their date to make it easier for us. And I'm like, dude, where do you think you are? Putting aside you're in Komoricon's house, so to speak. Komoricon that year was in the Oregon Convention Center, and still is at the Oregon Convention Center. It's one of the biggest places you can hold a convention in Oregon. And at the time, we took up half of it. Now we take it practically all of it. Not quite, but close. Really damn close. And Oricon, on the regular, has strictly been a hotel convention. It's been in a Hilton or a Marriott or that sort of thing. Smaller convention, smaller number of general attendees. Generally, no dances or raves or that sort of thing. The late night entertainment is room parties. And tends to cost more. But also on top of that, again, it's a hotel convention. We have a lot of hotels around the area which have convention room space. There's only one Oregon Convention Center. We have, Komoricon, fundamentally, is dependent on the whims of the Oregon Convention Center for what slots are available for them to be in. That's to a certain degree why it kind of shifted from being a Labor Day convention, which also put it opposite of PAX, or PAX West rather, PAX Prime, to being a Halloween convention. Is that's when the open spot was. It also meant that people didn't have to choose PAX or Komoricon. You could go to, budget permitting, you could go to both. There's months in between, so you have time to rack some PTO back up, or what have you, to accumulate more PTO. So there's that. And whereas Oricon has floated among multiple hotels, Jansen Beach, hotels in Jansen Beach, the Lloyd Center Hotel. There's another Hilton more towards the downtown Portland area. Hell, I bet if Oricon told McMinimans, hey, we want to post our convention in the McMinimans Kennedy School, McMinimans might be interested in a yes. I don't know. I haven't had that conversation with them, but that sounds like something that could be potentially a thing. But and on top of that, to give an idea of their kind of level of contempt, when I went to Oricon, one of the things I would do was I put on they ask you on the form, hey, what would you be interested in doing panel discussions on? Because science fiction convention panels are generally more of a bunch of people doing a panel discussion with a moderator as opposed to a general host, as opposed to the way an anime convention is, where you have an AV system and a PowerPoint and a person or group of people doing a discussion amongst themselves and taking a Q&A from the audience later, but based on whatever's on the slide, or being a more educational lecture kind of setup. And what Oricon would do, and other science fiction conventions do this as well, is say, hey, what topics are you knowledgeable about? And would you be willing to be on a panel for? And I would, on the regular, put on anime on my list. I put my qualifications. I'm a critic for Bureau 42, which was the time. Primarily, podcast stuff I've done, video reviews, blog, that sort of thing. They never picked me, but I'm not. That's not why I'm upset. Who they did pick was a guy who used to, past tense, be involved with the AMV rooms for Komoricon back either in Vancouver or further south when they were operating out of Eugene. And there's this thing, and the younger fans would aggregate to these panels, to those panels. Like, when you'd get younger fans, they would go to the anime panels. You'd get them. You'd get those viewers. You'd get those people in those rooms. And they'd go to other panels and such as well, but you'd definitely get them in those rooms. Presumably, if Romantasy was a thing, they'd be in those panel rooms as well. And this guy, whenever the topic of Hayao Miyazaki would come up, and if it didn't come up, he would bring it up. He would go, whenever the topic, his expression would be to these younger, at this time, younger millennials coming into Gen Z. I guess it'd be junior millennials, geriatric Gen Z. I don't know what the nomenclature is for this. Would be like, oh, I don't like Miyazaki. You see, Miyazaki, he would say that Miyazaki, he didn't like Miyazaki because Miyazaki was an environmentalist, and he considered himself an anti-environmentalist. He believed that we should strip mine the earth for all of its actual natural resources and move on to the next planet. You know, like the bad guy aliens from Independence Day. And I would be in the room, invariably, when he'd say this. And I'd be looking at the kids in the room. Kids who are younger than this guy, younger than me. Maybe somewhat closer to my age, but often younger than me. I'd be 30-something, they'd be 20-something, or just 18, or maybe even teenagers from high school and it came with their parents. And like the comfort level of the room dropped, and everyone, like all the kids, kind of squirmed in their seats. Even like the other panel, like there's a couple other guys who'd show up and they'd be regulars at these panels, and even they'd be like they never go like, dude, really? But you, because this guy's the moderator, but like they were, I could see them thinking it. And I'm not good at reading body language and faces, but even I can. Even a blind man, even if would be blind person, could see, could feel the discomfort and see like the dude, what vibes in the room. And the problem is they kept bringing this guy back and kept bringing this guy back, and eventually I just kind of noticed like the ambient kid level, relatively young person level, I shouldn't say kid, the ambient young person, the ambient junior millennial, older Gen Z vibe of the room, just like of the convention, like number of people around, just kept going down. And that's kind of parts when I dropped out. Like, I think like actually particularly like after that Kimura Con, where I brought up, hey, look, this is one of the barriers that's happening, that's keeping young people from coming to Kimura Con, or from coming from Kimura Con to Oricon. If you're trying to get younger audiences, which if you are here, that's your goal. You are doing the outreach for that reason. I would think, unless it's just, oh, they gave us a free table, we might as well have somebody come out and be at it, and we didn't care who. But if your goal is, hey, you're trying to get younger people to come to your science fiction convention, recognize the scheduling issues of your audience. The anime fans who you want to get to come to your science fiction convention, they're still anime fans. They're not going to miss out to the big convention where they meet their con friends at to take a chance on your new, on what is for them a new convention. The same way that the people going to Oricon, they have their con friends who they meet there every year. They maybe only ever see every year. And that's important to them that they go to that, or to Oricon or another similar convention. So, yeah, why not work around them? Like, particularly, like, honestly, particularly, like, it feels like flip to say this, but oftentimes, like, I was 35, I was like 35 at one of these Oricons, and I was consistently the youngest person, often the youngest person in the room. A lot of the other times, the people who were there either were, I don't want to sound ageist, like, I'm not going to say like, it's not ageist to say this. A lot of people there were retired, or people who were retired, people who were on the cusp of retirement, are people who are at a level of seniority in their jobs where functionally they could take time off, extended time off, whenever they wanted, with no significant consequences from their work. They could say, oh yeah, I want to take this like 2 weeks in around the 4th of July off. And their manager would go, sure, great, no problem. Like, that's kind of the age level and seniority level they were at. And oftentimes also like seniority, higher staff level at the places they work. In some cases, people who ran companies. So with all of that, it's like, okay, you're trying to get younger audiences to come to your science fiction convention. And I want younger audiences to come to science fiction conventions. I want science fiction conventions to thrive. I didn't do videos on Prisoners of Gravity. I haven't done extensive videos in the past of this channel for years over the Hugo Award nominees because I don't like literary science fiction. I didn't go to Worldcon in the years when Sad and Rabid Puppies were at their peak and voted no award on all those categories because I don't love science fiction, and literary science fiction at that. I want literary science fiction conventions to survive and thrive and go on existing long after I'm gone. I want there to be a Worldcon 200. I want Worldcon to experience its bicentennial. I want there to be the 200th Nebula Awards. I want people to keep reading and writing science fiction and going to hotels or convention centers to talk about it and share how much they love it when Isaac Asimov is dust. Like, he's dead now, he's already passed away. If he's like go on until like long after he is dust, and he is remembered the way and discuss the way we talk about Jules Verne. Like, that's what I want. And for convention culture to exist, you need new blood. And I think while there are some good ideas that were brought forward, very good ideas that were brought forward on that episode of the show, and I will link to it in the show notes, I think the core issue that they did not discuss, and I don't want to put them on blast, because I think that some of the people who were putting these ideas forward have that knowledge of that cross-pollination firsthand from going to anime conventions, but they didn't say that on the show. But I think the core fundamental thing that needs to happen is the people running these literary science fiction conventions need to start going to other conventions outside of literary science fiction on the regular. They, like, when I read the Notenki memoirs, let's do back up a bit and kind of wrap this up. When I read the Notenki memoirs when I was younger, which is a book by one of the founders of Gainax, and they talk about the organization of Daikon, how it was led to the Daikon 3 and 4 animations, because it's a core part of the founding lore of Gainax. When it came to people who were running Daikon 3 and 4, what they did is they came, because one of the people also became involved in the Japanese Worldcon bid as well, or bids. They came to the United States, and they went to a bunch of literary science fiction conventions and gaming conventions in general. They went to, like, DundraCon. They went to KublaCon. They went to Genghis Khan. They went to all sorts of other, like, conventions like this, to learn about con running culture and how conventions are run. They didn't just hang out in conventions in Japan, and they didn't just go to literary science fiction conventions. To quote the great sage, not exactly, to quote a character written by Quentin Tarantino, they need to walk the earth like Kane in Kung Fu. These con runners, they need to go. One other example of this is for talking about online gaming conventions. They need to go to other convention types. All right, it got called away for a moment. So to finish this thought, the people who are running these literary science fiction conventions, not just your local ones like Oricon, your big ones like WesterCon, like Worldcon, that sort of thing, they need to go to these other conventions. They need to go to, frankly, to your Portland Retro Gaming Expos, maybe not Portland Retro Gaming Expos, but your local anime conventions, your similarly scaled anime conventions, the ones that are successful, the ones that everyone wants to go to. Or if you're doing a big convention, the big ones like Otakon. They need to go to video game music conventions like MagFest. They need to go to tabletop game conventions like not necessarily Gen Con, but like local level conventions. They need to go to PAX. I mean, yes, PAX is run by a corporation, it's run by ReadPop, but it's got a fair number of volunteers and stuff. You need to go to the other conventions and talk to the people who run them and learn and volunteer or agree to work there and learn how to run, how the other people do it, and bring back those lessons and see what else can be applied to literary science fiction conventions.
Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe. And also consider backing my Patreon. Patreon backers get episodes up to 1 week early of this show and any future Let's Plays. Also, please consider backing my Ko-fi. Tossing me a few bucks also helps support the show, and it's not a monthly obligation or anything like that.